Tonight, 2 people have died trapped by a fast-moving wildfire in Manitoba.
The whole community grieving with the family.
Hundreds forced from their homes as dry conditions and scorching heat spark an early fire season.
It's my pleasure on behalf of the Cabinet to sign this order.
The Prime Minister signaling his first priority, a middle-class tax cut. But Canadians won't get a budget before the summer. And Filipino migrants promised a life in Canada lose their savings.
It's heart-shattering.
The BC-based recruiting firm now alleged to be a pyramid scheme.
All these documents are bogus. It means nothing.
The CBC News investigation.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us. A tragic development in Manitoba tonight where police say 2 people have been killed after being trapped in a wildfire. RCMP say they weren't able to rescue the pair last night because the conditions were just too extreme. The area is one of several under a mandatory evacuation order as crews deal with the growing number of dangerous fires. The province says 5 of those fires are currently out of control, the majority in the southeastern part of the province, including Lac de Bonnie, about 100 kilometers away from Winnipeg, where the bodies of the victims were recovered. Right now, some regions are still inaccessible, and many evacuees remain unsure of what they will return home to. Cameron McIntosh shows us the devastating, very early start to wildfire season.
Near Lac de Bonnie, Manitoba, smoky skies, access limited, first responders only. Most areas here under evacuation order as wildfires rage in eastern Manitoba with fatal results.
Officers with the Manitoba RCMP recovered 2 bodies believed to be an adult male and female.
Manitoba RCMP confirming 2 people are dead after fire prevented police from responding to a rescue call in an area with a mandatory evacuation order.
At the time, wildfire conditions were deplorable, and it did not provide any mechanism or any means for the police.
Right now, several wildfires are burning in eastern Manitoba, the largest in Nopaming Provincial Park, over 100,000 hectares. Conditions so volatile, at times it's been too dangerous to fight. The province saying it's prioritizing areas where fires are posing the most danger.
Manitoba is doing everything it can to make sure that people are safe, and we do continue to monitor the conditions that are very dynamic hour to hour.
When you see people heading towards danger at a time when property, life, livelihoods are put at risk, we got to say thanks.
With that, the province is closing several parks, including campgrounds and cottages, while several municipalities issue evacuation orders. Krista Diddy doesn't know if she still has a home.
I've got 3 kids with me, and it's hard not knowing what's going to happen next.
You gotta get the hell out of here. Driving home Monday from canoeing in Nopaming, Riley Martin captured this close call.
Whoa! And there were literally columns of fire on either side of me, lighting up a tree on either side.
Now, rain and cooler temperatures are in the forecast, but authorities say likely not enough to knock these fires down.
And so, Cam, part of the issue, it seems, has been these scorching temperatures in the recent days.
Yeah, so over the last few days, we've had temperatures here in Manitoba up into the high 30s. That's abnormal for this time of year. But also there are parts of this province, including where these fires are, that are abnormally dry. The fire risk has been rated between high and extreme in many of these places. So while authorities were worried about these fires, it's not really a surprise that they're happening. Some of them have started naturally through things like lightning. Others have been started through human activity. Either way, they're out of control. Manitoba's fire season getting off to an early and sadly a fatal start. Adrian?
Definitely. All right, Cam McIntosh in Winnipeg, thank you. Mark Carney's new cabinet has been given its first major task. The Prime Minister signing a directive to pass a new tax cut by Canada Day. Ashley Burke now with what he is proposing and why he is already facing criticism from across the aisle.
Thank you very much.
The Prime Minister opting for a pen over a black Sharpie for a photo op resembling those of Donald Trump.
We're acting on affordability
as we look to build out this economy, it's my pleasure on behalf of the Cabinet to sign this order to deliver that tax cut.
Following his first cabinet meeting, Mark Carney signing a document that instructs his finance minister to get legislation ready to try and pass a tax cut by Canada Day.
A very significant step that will benefit 22 million Canadians across the nation, that will provide a family with 2 income up to $840 of benefits.
With a minority government, the Liberals will need the support of at least 2 MPs from other parties to get it passed. But there are more divisive issues this cabinet is up against as it gets to work. Among them, vocal Western discontent.
I've let the new Prime Minister know in no uncertain terms that we need Team Canada to be on Team Alberta for once.
Alberta's Premier raising concerns about Carney's new Environment Minister, Julie DeBruzen. Saying she appears to be another anti-oil and gas minister like her predecessor, Stephen Guilbeault, who remains in cabinet.
What do you say in response to her concerns?
So on pipelines, people should remember that we bought a pipeline, Trans Mountain, and that is only used right now about 40% capacity. So I think before we start talking about building an entire new pipeline, maybe we should maximize the use of existing infrastructure.
Smith seized on Guilbeault's comments, saying that pipeline is close to capacity. Guilbeault's answer is also in contrast to Carney, who has said that he's open to approving major infrastructure projects, including pipelines.
And so, Ashley, we've now learned the government doesn't plan to release a budget before the summer.
Yeah, Adrian, and that means that Canadians won't get a chance to see the government's books until sometime in the fall, when the finance minister says he plans to release an economic statement. The Conservatives leader called that unacceptable, a failure and betrayal to Canadians. Francois-Philippe Champagne said the government is planning to lay out its priorities in more details in the speech from the throne later this month.
All right, Ashley Burke in Ottawa. The UK's Sky News has released a sit-down interview with Mark Carney, one that focused primarily on dealing with Donald Trump.
You're inviting King Charles to come here to this building, to open Parliament. Are you trying to send a message to the US President?
Well, I think His Majesty coming sends a message first and foremost to Canadians. It is a message of sovereignty.
Carney was also asked about the UK's decision to invite Trump for a state visit at the height of his annexation threats. On that, the Prime Minister said Canadians weren't impressed. Elections Canada is admitting it made an error on one special ballot in the federal election. A Bloc Québécois voter in Quebec's Terrebonne riding had a ballot returned due to an incorrect mailing address label. The Liberals eventually won the Terrebonne riding by a single vote after it flip-flopped during recounts. But now it's unclear if the result could change due to this error. In Newfoundland, a recount is underway. In Terra Nova, the Peninsula's riding, the Liberals beat the Conservatives by only 12 votes. Officials say there are over 1,000 disputed ballots for the judge to go through. At the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior Hockey players, a former teammate testified about what he saw that night. Katie Nicholson brings us his account of what happened in that hotel room and a warning, some of that testimony was graphic.
A night to celebrate a gold medal win. Some of the players from Canada's World Junior Hockey team, the ones old enough to drink, partied at Jack's, a London, Ontario bar. That's where Tyler Steenbergen says he briefly saw Michael McLeod and a girl together. Steenbergen's former World Junior Hockey teammates Michael McLeod, Alex Formenton, Carter Hart, Dylan Dubé, and Cal Foote are all charged with sexually assaulting a woman known as EM that June night in 2018 in a hotel room. They have all pleaded not guilty. Steenbergen said after he and some players closed the bar, they got poutine, then received a text to go to McLeod's hotel room. He identified 9 other players who were in the room, where he says he heard someone say, "Guys, there's a naked girl in the bathroom." She came out, Steenbergen testified. She went onto the floor and started masturbating, and then asked guys to come over and have sex with her, he said. The Crown asked what the atmosphere in the room was like. Steenbergen said, "I feel like when she asked the guys to come over to have sex with her, I feel like everyone was just kind of in shock that she had said that." Steenbergen testified Carter Hart received oral sex from the woman for 30 seconds or a minute, and that McLeod also received oral sex. That woman, EM, just wrapped up her testimony. She previously told the court she was drunk and out of it. She said the sex acts that happened that night were degrading and not consensual, and that she cried and tried to leave the room at several points. Steenbergen is expected to continue testifying Thursday before another player tells the court what he saw that night. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, London, Ontario.
In the Middle East, Donald Trump praised Syria's leader after an extraordinary in-person meeting in Saudi Arabia. The president received praise of his own after he promised to lift sanctions on Syria, reversing a decades-long American policy. Chris Brown was in Riyadh and shows us how the day unfolded.
Ahmed al-Shara's journey is nothing short of astounding. In just 5 months, he's gone from militant with a bounty on his head to an endorsement from the President of the United States. Saudi officials released silent video and images of Donald Trump meeting with Syria's president and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh.
We are currently exploring normalizing relations with Syria's new government, as you know. Good luck, Syria. Show us something very special.
Trump's surprise announcement, urged by Turkey and his Saudi hosts, that he would end punishing U.S. sanctions imposed against the former Assad regime, generated his biggest round of applause over his 2-day visit to Riyadh. Shara, the one-time al-Qaeda militant and U.S. prisoner who pushed Assad out, impressed Trump.
Great. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy.
Syria is fragile, with border areas occupied by Israel, and Shara has a huge challenge keeping sectarian divisions from pulling the country apart. In the capital, Damascus, though, many celebrated the U.S. move, hoping the end of sanctions will mean an end to international isolation. From today, money transfers will be easier, said exchange employee Amar Kalaji. Same with IT, says Mohai Eldin Al-Sayed. We couldn't obtain licenses for any servers or firewalls simply because we are in Syria. On his trip, Trump has talked up the immense business possibilities that exist in the region, and at his next stop, Qatar, his hosts were ready with pen and paper to sign an enormous contract for new jets from Boeing.
Trump heard repeatedly when he was here that the region needs peace to be prosperous, and he said he urged Syria's leader to recognize Israel. But Israel has been one of the few countries urging Trump to keep the sanctions on. It's been referring to al-Shara as a terrorist. Chris Brown, CBC News, Riyadh.
Health authorities in Gaza say at least 70 Palestinians are dead, including children, as you're about to see a barrage of Israeli military strikes hit the Strip. As Briar Stewart explains, among the targets, a hospital.
Another block in the northern Gaza city of Jabalia crushed in Israeli strikes. A neighborhood overwhelmed with destruction, and one of the few functioning hospitals crowded with the dead. According to Gaza health officials, at least 80 people were killed in strikes in the last 24 hours, including more than 20 children. We have nothing to do with anything that's happening, said this man. Why is my home being targeted? Just hours before, outside the European hospital in Han Yunis, another strike. We can't show you the moment of the explosion because it's too graphic, but this is the aftermath. Israel says it was targeting a top Hamas leader and a command and control compound. It accused militants of using the patients and doctors as shields. Some of them were left stranded on the street. My leg is broken, said this woman. They told me to get out. There's no ambulance, no car, nothing, she says. As a videographer working for CBC News took these images, the sounds of explosions continued to boom, but the threat of strikes is far from the only danger. Israel has blocked food and other supplies from entering Gaza since early March, and aid groups warn that the region is on the brink of famine, a charge Israel has repeatedly dismissed.
Nobody is starving in Gaza, and again, if somebody will be starving, it's on the heads of Hamas.
The blockade remains in place despite increasing international condemnation, including from Canada's new Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Using food as a political tool is simply unacceptable, and we need to continue to work towards a ceasefire.
Israel is sending negotiators to Qatar to try to secure a deal to pause the fighting and free the remaining hostages. But at the same time, it's also vowing to expand and intensify its operations in Gaza. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
On the eve of a planned summit in Istanbul aimed at negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine, pressure is mounting on the Kremlin.
Я очікую, хто прибуде від Росії, тоді буду.
I'm waiting to see who will arrive from Russia, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Then I will determine what steps Ukraine should take. Zelensky challenged the Russian leader to meet with him face to face after Putin proposed to return to direct negotiations. Well, tonight, the Kremlin named the members of its delegation. Putin is not on the list, and European leaders are threatening sanctions against Moscow if a ceasefire fails to materialize. Well, for a second day, Cassandra Ventura testified against her former boyfriend, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, saying the pain from the relationship drove her to consider suicide. He has pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking and other charges, but a warning, the allegations in Chris Reyes' story tonight are disturbing.
In the final moments of the prosecution's questioning of their star witness, Cassie Ventura broke down as she summed up the toll her 11-year relationship with Sean Diddy Combs took on her. I didn't want to be alive anymore at that point. The revelation came after 2 full days on the stand in which she detailed the horrific and relentless abuse she said she suffered in the hands of Combs, a man she claimed raped her after they broke up for good.
Having to recount what happened during those 10 years and beyond, and talking about her contemplation of suicide, really just very powerful.
For the first time, the jury was shown images from recordings of arranged encounters Ventura had with sex workers, what Combs called freak-offs, that are central to the allegations of sex trafficking against the music mogul. Combs would later threaten to release the recordings to blackmail her, she said on the stand. During the freak-offs, and there were allegedly hundreds, Ventura testified that Combs gave her drugs and directed her to perform sex acts with dozens of male escorts, even as she suffered from UTIs and mouth sores. Whatever was going to make him not be angry at me and threatening me, I was willing to do, she said. Photos of her bruised body, a gash on her eyebrow, were also shown to the jury, the result of being thrown, kicked, punched by Combs, testified Ventura. I just felt trapped, she said. Ventura testified after therapy, she decided to go public, filing a bombshell civil lawsuit.
She revealed that she settled that case for $20 million.
Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Ventura will return for a third day of testimony that will include cross-examination. This trial is expected to last 8 weeks, with more accusers scheduled to take the stand. If convicted, Combs could get up to life in prison. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
CBC News has learned Canada is expanding its military presence in the far north, with forces in the region 10 months out of every year.
We want to be in the Arctic on a near-permanent basis.
Why some say it's an opportunity to strengthen Canadian sovereignty. Next. Plus, a brazen kidnapping attempt on the daughter of a cryptocurrency CEO. The shocking video from the streets of Paris. And later, the retired social worker who really wants to hear what's on your mind. No judgment.
I'm trying to build a bridge between myself, who's sitting here, and folks who are walking by.
His cross-country listening tour. We're back in 2 minutes. You're looking at an attempted kidnapping by 4 armed gang members who targeted the daughter and grandson of a French cryptocurrency CEO. The woman managed to grab one attacker's gun and throw it away. Police say the attackers fled as the noise attracted onlookers. It is the latest in a string of attacks on crypto players and their families. CBC News has learned that the Canadian Armed Forces are ramping up their presence in the Arctic, roughly doubling the length of training missions. And Murray Brewster shows us it may be an opportunity for Canada to try something new in the north.
Showing the flag in Canada's far north, where even the simplest tasks require teamwork. And the rest of the world seems very, very far away. CBC News has learned the Canadian military intends to spend more time on land, in the air, and at sea in a significant expansion of military exercises throughout the Arctic.
We want to be in the Arctic on a near permanent basis.
More troops, more often, up to 10 months a year of training, as opposed to the current 5 to 6 months, and not just Canadians.
We've got a number of allies that have voiced their interest to operate with us in the Arctic.
With U.S. President Donald Trump's talk of annexing Canada and threats to take Greenland by military force, this defense expert sees an opportunity for the Liberal government.
Well, one could think imaginatively about how our allies could support Canadian sovereignty.
NATO allies have been invited into the Canadian Arctic before, but only in small numbers. Having more NATO troops, particularly Europeans present, would send a clear, unmistakable message.
If there's political will, there's a lot we can do in the short term that doesn't involve spending billions and billions of dollars on new equipment.
Ottawa has been notoriously reluctant to invite NATO into the north in large numbers, the way Norway does every year. Canada has been feeling isolated, though, and could use friends now more than ever, says this NATO expert.
The one thing that the Canadians have to do is spend more on defence, and very, very quickly, through hosting exercises and other such activities.
There is also a school of thought that says U.S. forces should continue to be invited into the Arctic. By accepting the invitation, experts say Washington is tacitly acknowledging Canadian sovereignty, despite what Donald Trump says. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Despite living in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, a new UN report says Canadian kids are falling behind on some key indicators.
1 in 4 of our children and young people are not learning the social skills that they need.
What it says needs to be done to reverse the trend. Plus, an alleged pyramid scheme preying on the hopes and dreams of those trying to come to Canada.
I felt like I'm never going to get my money back anymore.
Lindsay Duncombe with the CBC News investigation. And in the midst of a housing shortage, why is Canada's condo market crashing?
We haven't seen sales volumes running this low again since probably the 1990s.
Nisha Patel looks at where the buyers have gone. The National breaks down the story shaping our world. Next. An explosion at a chemical plant near the Spanish city of Seville sent those huge plumes of thick black smoke into the air and caused a stay-at-home order for nearly 80,000 people and health warnings for 150,000. Authorities have not yet said what chemicals were involved in the fire. Now, when it comes to the well-being of children, Canada falls behind many comparable countries, according to a global survey by UNICEF. Alison Northcott has the troubling numbers and the possible solutions.
17-year-old Emma Ann McDougall says today's teens have had to navigate a lot of distress, like pandemic shutdowns and the hazards of social media.
I would see a bunch of content online, like beauty standards mainly, and it really affected my mental health.
Struggles like that are reflected in a new UNICEF report looking at indicators of child well-being in several wealthy countries. It found Canada's performance falls behind most of its peer countries in most aspects of children's lives.
1 in 4 of our children and young people are not learning the social skills that they need, or that 1 in 5 is saying that they are frequently bullied at school. These are rates that are alarming.
The report ranks Canada 13th out of 36 countries for overall life satisfaction. For adolescent suicide, it's all the way down at 33rd place out of 42 countries.
Over the last 4 years, we have seen the number of young people under the age of 13 who are contacting us about suicide double. But we're also seeing increases in young people talking about body image and eating challenges and grief and abuse.
The report recommends expanding school lunch programs, doubling the child disability benefit, and implementing the Spirit Bear Plan, which aims to end inequalities in public services for First Nations children, youth, and families.
Generations of racism, discrimination, and colonization has greatly impacted their current situation, and that those policies are having a very real impact on them today.
For McDougall, initiatives like this youth leadership event have helped.
It's important to see youth as important as everyone else because it's the truth.
She says policymakers must listen to young people about what they say could help improve their lives. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Time now to dig deeper into the stories shaping your world, including a reset for Canada's crumbling condo market. Once a solid investment, now headed for a bear market. Condominium owners struck with falling prices and rising inventory.
We haven't seen sales volumes running this low again since probably the 1990s.
We'll show you what's driving the drop in demand. But first,
I had to borrow money. I had to use my car as collateral.
Eager to work in Canada, dozens of Filipinos hoping for a better life put their trust and their money in the hands of a Vancouver recruiting agency.
We just dreamt of going there.
Lindsay Duncombe breaks down how those dreams became nightmares and why one former employee believes PLC Global Referral Solutions is an alleged pyramid scheme.
The promised land. We deliver the result.
They were promised a Canadian dream.
Refund now!
Many now say the dream was a lie. Victims say they were scammed into thinking they had jobs, then recruiting others into the same trap.
So basically our job is also to look for other candidates who might be interested to come here in Canada.
Life savings gone.
I felt like I'm never gonna get my money back anymore.
In what this former employee calls a pyramid scheme.
All these documents that they got the clients sign are bogus. It means nothing.
The company? Promised Land Consultancy. The target? Filipinos looking for a better life.
And my kids were excited about the snow. We were about to move to St. John's. That was the plan.
Christian Ray Sualog lives in the Philippines. He's an accountant with 3 kids.
A lot of people here are struggling, to provide for their families.
Last year, a friend reached out with an opportunity in Canada.
It looked legitimate to me because he was my close friend. So I said, okay, I trust you. I don't know the company, but I put my trust in you. So let's talk about this. So that's how I met the Promised Land Consultancy.
The promise? Pay $25,000 and the consultancy would do the paperwork, securing Sualog and his family permanent residency in Canada and a job in Newfoundland. He paid half in advance, more than $12,000.
I had to borrow money. I had to use my car as collateral so I can raise the first payment.
Since then, nothing. No job, no refund, no Canada.
It's heart-shattering. And I barely slept since middle of last year.
Turns out, Sualog and his friend were both caught up in a recruiting scheme run out of Vancouver.
We are the Luchica family. We are now here in Vancouver, Canada.
The Promised Land Consultancy, or PLC, offered an immigration fast track.
Thanks to the help of the Promised Land Consultancy,
handling the paperwork for student visas, work permits, even permanent residency. Online posts targeted the Filipino population.
Hi, I'm Joseph Miranda and I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
It's CEO Joseph Miranda, a picture of success, showing off cars.
Electric car, so beautiful. And look at the interior.
Living large, taking trips.
In the beginning, It seemed like a promising company.
Rosanna Salita is a licensed immigration consultant. She was hired by the Promised Land Consultancy in March 2024. She saw red flags when she met her co-workers.
After a week, I found out that they have hired tourists. Half of the people working there are all visitors. And they said that all of them are their clients.
Red flag, because under almost all circumstances, it's illegal for people on a visitor visa to work in Canada. Here's what she figured out was happening. People would pay thousands of dollars to the Promised Land to secure a job. While they were waiting, the consultancy hired some of them to recruit others, even though they were not legally able to work. And she says, as far as she could tell, there were no real jobs.
You can tell that the visitors were so shocked that they realized that they've been duped.
On top of that, Salita says the company fraudulently used her signature.
See, there's my signature, digital signature that I used.
More than a dozen times.
So all these documents that they got the clients sign are bogus. It means nothing.
After a month on the job, Salita quit. But first, she downloaded all the documents she could. CBC News added up the fees from those contracts and others we obtained. We found in a 9-month period between August 2023 and May 2024, PLC charged more than $2 million in fees to more than 150 people and collected at least $500,000. Some may have gotten what they paid for, but not these protesters.
They never delivered on their promise.
Late last year, they gathered outside the Promised Land's Vancouver office demanding refunds.
Tama na, sobra na! Refund now!
That's where we met Michael. We aren't using his real name. He's worried about repercussions.
Basically, our job is to look for some people who might be interested to come here in Canada as well.
Michael was one of the visitors who paid money for a job he never got and ended up having to recruit others. He lost his life savings and feels guilty for the role he played.
These people are suffering right now because they couldn't get the refund, and for some of them, they tried to reach us to get help, but we couldn't really do anything as well because we couldn't even help ourselves.
CBC News has learned Canada Border Services is investigating Promised Land Consultancy. That agency could recommend criminal charges to prosecutors. That's on top of 15 labor complaints and 11 lawsuits. And the Philippine government itself has put out a warning about the company. We reached out repeatedly to CEO Joseph Miranda and got no response. So we visited the Promised Land's last Vancouver location and found a sheriff's notice on the door.
You can see there's the British Columbia Sheriff's Service on the door. It says, "We've made many attempts at contacting you."
We called Joseph Miranda's cell phone, no answer. Others are desperate to get answers too.
This is the bankrupt that I gave it to Joseph. That's worth 10,000.
Lillian Tanoha is fighting to get her money back. She's a personal care worker in Vancouver. She paid $10,000 to the Promised Land Consultancy to secure a student visa for her niece. When nothing came through, she took Joseph Miranda to small claims court.
This is also my first time to go to the small court and file the case, so everything here is just new to me.
After an initial ruling in her favor, she received an e-transfer for $2,000. She's still fighting for the other 8.
If somebody there connected to Joseph Miranda.
She even tried to deliver documents in person to Joseph Miranda.
I think anger really drives you to do it. Like you're angry, you really wanted to do, not for yourself, but for everybody.
I despise them, and that still would be an understatement.
Christian Ray Sualog is about to lose his car. He expects it will be seized soon to pay off the debt he took on to pay the Promised Land. the family's days of dreaming of a new life in Newfoundland are over.
We actually know all the roads in St. John's, almost all of them, because we would do street view in Google Maps and show the kids what we're gonna do when we get there. So we just dreamt of going there. I dreamt of providing for my, oh my God, sorry. Sorry.
The Promised Land is no longer operating in BC, but they have set up shop in California, still promising a better life in a new land.
What we've seen in much of CBC's reporting on immigration frauds is that it can be tough to get authorities to act. So a lot of these lawsuits are playing out in small claims court with people like Lillian representing themselves.
And so at this point, Lindsay, has there been any resolution?
Well, we were in court a few weeks ago with Lillian. Joseph Miranda, the CEO of Promised Land, was there, and he told the court he did not have the money to pay her right away. So the judge ordered a new payment plan. And Lillian tells us she has received an additional $4,000. So now she's out $4,000. As Miranda was leaving the courtroom, there were other people there. They were waiving their contracts, asking for refunds. Miranda had nothing to say to them or to us.
All right, thank you for this. That's Lindsay Duncombe in Vancouver. Coming up, despite a big demand for housing in this country, those trying to sell condos are struggling to find buyers.
We're pretty much at a recession in the condo market.
Nisha Patel breaks down why it could get worse next. A downturn for Canada's condo market as sales slump and homes sit empty in the middle of a housing crisis.
We've got 7 months of inventory, which is insane.
Disappearing demand driving prices down and forcing developers to reconsider construction.
We're pretty much at a recession in the condo market.
Nisha Patel breaks down why buyers have disappeared and how much worse it could get.
In Canada's housing market, condos are the weakest link. The steepest drop in sales and prices have been in Toronto. The trends in Vancouver are troubling too. Here's why.
So this is one of my listings. We've had this one on the market for just under 3 months.
Toronto real estate agent Sean Miller says new listings are piling up on the condo market. Units that once would have sold in days can now take weeks.
We've got 7 months of inventory, which is insane. And we just don't have the buyers to absorb it. We haven't seen that much inventory in 20 years.
With so many properties to choose from, buyers are looking for deals, and sellers can no longer demand the hefty prices of a few years ago.
If you're a seller and you don't have something that's amazing, it's tricky and you've got to be realistic.
A record wave of newly built condos is also adding to supply. Nearly 30,000 units were completed last year in the Greater Toronto Area alone, and there are more coming online in 2025.
What we're seeing now with all of this supply coming to completion is actually a reflection of demand conditions that existed 2 or 3 years ago. And that doesn't exist anymore.
Bank of Montreal senior economist Robert Kavchik says the downturn is concentrated in the largest cities. Condo sales in April tumbled 30% in the Toronto region from a year ago and 20% in Vancouver.
We haven't seen sales volumes running this low again since probably the 1990s. We're pretty much at a recession in the condo market.
The condo market is being described as a buyer's market. The problem is there are few buyers to be found. From investors to homeowners, demand is disappearing. For years, investors have been some of the biggest buyers of pre-construction condos, knowing there was a steady stream of renters in the pipeline. Not anymore.
Federal policymakers have put a cap on immigration. Population growth is falling off very quickly. You have a historically high number of purpose-built rental units.
Now rents are coming down in many cities. The average rent of a one-bedroom condo in Toronto fell almost 6% in April from a year ago, and Vancouver fell more than 4%. Add on a much higher interest rate environment, and the cost of carrying the property as a rental is less appealing.
The investors are basically gone from the market right now because rather than expectations of price increases, they have to look at things like cash flow. And at these prices, it just doesn't make sense at 4% borrowing costs.
Thousands of buyers are also scrambling, facing steep losses, as their pre-sale condos purchased a few years ago are worth less than their original value.
There's projects in downtown Vancouver, pre-sold for $2,500 plus a square foot, and appraisals are coming in at $1,900. There's gonna be like a cohort of investors that are gonna be scarred for a long time. They're gonna say, you know what, I'm never buying an investment condo again.
Vancouver realtor Steve Suretsky says that's essentially freezing the pre-construction market. Developers need to sell most of their units before they can put shovels in the ground.
There's no market for them, and they're having to make difficult decisions of either converting and pivoting to rental or just completely shelving the project completely.
This one is listed as 800 grand.
Home buyers, people looking for condos to actually live in, could fill that gap in demand, but many are still unimpressed with the prices and sizes available. At an average of 650 square feet, Toronto condos have been described as shoeboxes.
And what we demographically need is larger units with 2 or 3 bedrooms, and in a lot of cases, backyards.
And there's been one other wild card that's put a chill on housing.
Reciprocal tariffs. 25% tariffs. It's a beautiful word.
Amid the trade war with the U.S., unemployment in Canada is on the rise, and consumer confidence is shaky, forcing many buyers to put major purchases on hold.
A small interest rate reduction in June could make things improve a little bit for a period of time, but then, something else could change that sentiment. We're just in this time of uncertainty right now where we just got to ride it out.
That combination of soaring supply and declining demand is putting pressure on prices. Experts say the market has shifted significantly over the past few months, and the downturn is far from over. The average price of a condo in the Greater Toronto Area came in at about $678,000 in April. That's down 16% from the market peak 3 years ago and $130,000 cheaper. In Vancouver, a typical condo is now priced at more than $762,000. That's 9% lower than in 2022.
Affordability has improved modestly, but it's still very unaffordable to the vast majority of people living here.
Economists forecast in some markets, condo prices will fall another 10% this year. That would erase most of the gains seen during the pandemic. A stark reminder that rising prices in real estate aren't always guaranteed.
Now, it's not just the condo market crumbling. Sales are also slowing for other types of housing. In March, national home sales hit their lowest level since 2009. Up next, a retired social worker lends an ear, no charge.
I'm trying to build a bridge between myself and folks who are walking by.
His cross-country listening tour in our moment. All right, let's set the scene for you here. The man on the left is Paul Jenkinson, a retired social worker, seen here taking part in his cross-Canada listening tour, where he offers people space, really, to vent about anything at all at no charge. Starting in Nova Scotia, he plans to take this tour all the way to BC, and tonight, his therapeutic mission makes our moment.
I'm going across Canada. I have a sign that says, "You are not alone. I will listen." And this is the invitation. In a way, I'm trying to build a bridge between myself, who's sitting here, and folks who are walking by. The emotions that people have expressed have been varied. Some people come with a wonderful story and they want me to know, hey, you know, I have something good to tell you. And then there are people that come by who are absolutely distraught. You know, there's some safety in being heard. Why did I choose to do this? Well, 50 years of professional experience, 70 years of living. So I know upheaval, I know sorrow, and I have a skill, so I'm making it available.
Good for him. He says he has been invited into homeless shelters, into retirement homes. He's still on the East Coast, is wiggling his way through, will go anywhere anyone feels they maybe need to be heard. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault.